1, 2, 3. All right. Welcome everybody for joining us tonight on our Deep Learning Adventures meetup. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. So the subject of tonight's meeting is a certification that's from Amazon Web Services that has to do with machine learning specifically. And if you didn't get a chance to join us in December, we went through a certification before this for a cloud practitioner. I'll show you that in a second. But if the meetup page for this certification has all of the things that we're going to discuss tonight, it's got a link to this certification specifically, and we also have listed there will be this video and a playlist to go along with this certification, and you can easily find that. The other here's the cloud practitioner is already on that playlist, and we'll be adding machine learning videos as soon as we're done. So if you don't get a chance to stick with us tonight or join us in the next meeting, you can always catch up by looking at our YouTube playlist for this AWS certifications. We also have on Slack, we're welcome to join us there to continue the discussion offline. And one thing about it is that we've now added a new channel there that's titled AWS. So if you join that channel, you'll see discussions about all these specializations and any other topic you're interested in as far as the Amazon Web Services. I wanted to mention, if you're new to us in general, and if this is your first time joining our group, we were founded more than, I guess, coming up pretty close to our 2-year anniversary. And we are a group that looks at different courses on deep learning and machine learning, as well as we will go through this kind of thing where certifications. We'll often have people come in that we interview or discuss with, and we'll often do coding exercises as a group. And so please look back through many of our playlists and prior meetings for information about our prior adventures. The reason we're here tonight is to look at one of the AWS certifications. Amazon Web Services is a very large, oh shoot, just lost it. Okay, Amazon Web Services is a very large set of products that they offer where you can do things in the cloud, various services. And there are so many that really you need to have quite a lot of knowledge of their products to understand how to use them, especially in an efficient manner, since you are paying for access in sort of a pay-as-you-go model. So they have these set of certifications. They start off with this foundational level one, which is Cloud Practitioner. And we've completed this, and at least 4 of us have gotten our certification now. We're certified cloud practitioners. You can go on from this, and if you're interested in building out platforms, you can do the architecture role. If you're more interested in operations or developing applications for AWS, they have an operations developer and a DevOps professional certificate. And then they have a set of very specialized certificates that are tailored to different parts of their services. For instance, if you're going to be running databases on AWS, you might take that one. There's a security one, and almost all the IT kind of functionalities here. We are now just starting this AWS machine learning specialty. And hopefully by the end of this, many of us will have our certification as an AWS machine learning specialist. So with that, I will turn it over to George, who's going to present us on a strategy for preparing for this certification that we have embarked on. And please, like I said, if you're pursuing this, please go ahead and contribute your thoughts on it. Take it away, George.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. As David mentioned, this is a new adventure for us. We piloted with the Cloud Practitioner certification, and we gained some experience with the different services. Some of us have used this in our work environment. Some of us it was new. So it was good to get our feet wet, just for the very basic entry level for cloud practitioner. So this for this month, we're gonna continue our certification path with the machine learning certification from AWS, and really the goal is to become familiar with the different services that AWS offers, but also how do you do the entire machine learning pipeline, anywhere from data collection to data validation, evaluation, EDA, training, modeling, deployment, monitoring, and all that. On the event page, we have a presentation deck, and I'll be using that as the main resource, but feel free to also use the main page of the specialization here. So as Robert mentioned, as David mentioned, this is a specialty one. It requires, according to the website, so let me actually go to the website and refer there, 1 year of hands-on experience developing or running machine learning workloads on AWS, as well as experience and expertise in not only basic ML algorithms, but also hyperparameter tuning, deep learning frameworks like TensorFlow, Keras, PyTorch, and so forth, as well as training, deployment, and operational best practices. This is where it goes that role of pure data science to more like DevOps and software engineering. So this exam has 65 questions, and you have 180 minutes to complete. Costs about $300, but if you remember from our last session, if you take any exam with AWS, you get a 50% discount to the next one. So we're looking forward to utilizing that. There is an exam guide, but really for this session and the one that we're doing in a couple of weeks, we are putting together some resources that we think is a good approach to tackle this specialization. And those resources, I have them here in slide 4. So I have the main page here, the exam guide that I'll cover in a minute. We have something called machine learning plan. This is a tutorial, a very lengthy tutorial and learning path where it covers lots of interesting services. There's something called exam readiness, which is basically something that you'd look at once you've done this previous resources, once you've covered them, as well as sample questions and official practice questions similar to the ones we saw in the Cloud Practitioner. As we're covering this resource, we've come up with some new resources. We found some new resources. One of them is this Ramp Up guide that I'll cover in a minute, as well as this data science on AWS book and collection of videos, GitHub notebooks, and so forth. So I'll pause here for a second, Robert or David. Is there anything else you want to add to the overall agenda before I just take a quick dive into each?
Looks good.
Okay. So yeah, the main page is this one. The exam guide gives you an overview of the exam. I won't spend much time on it. I'll just mention what is different here than the previous one we took. If I remember correctly, the previous passing score was 700. Now it's 750, it's a bit increased for this specialty. You get 65 questions. 50 of them are scored. 15 of them, I think, are still A/B tested by AWS, but you don't know which one are not scored. So for all purposes, you get 65 questions. And then what are you actually being examined on and questioned on is this 4 different domains: data engineering, exploratory data analysis, modeling, and implementation and operations or deployment. Then this exam guide goes through a little bit of detail of what is expected to each field. So let me zoom in a little bit more for us to see. So data engineering, how do you actually access your data? How do you do data ingestion? Depending on the data type, if it's real time or batch or something else. What services do you use for different data types? And based on the scale of your data, what services do you use? Then you're expected to know more about the EDA process. There's quite a lot of resources here, both on making sure that your data is valid, there's no bias, no missing values, the labels are high quality, and so forth. Some basic feature engineering, and again, depending on the data, you might see anything from text or images or structured data, as well as some basic graphs for interpreting how are your features correlated with each other, some descriptive statistics, things like that. Then I think the largest part of the content or the exam is on the modeling itself. And this is where we're going to use a lot of expertise and experience with our previous deep learning adventures and machine learning adventures. So anything from framing a business problem to a machine learning problem, knowing when to use what type of machine learning problem, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning, selecting what task it is, and then the different models that are appropriate for each problem. How does the training happen? The hyperparameter optimization, the evaluation, and things that we've seen in the past. Then the new part for us will be how do you actually now take this model? In the past, we've done like a notebook, work with notebooks, Colab, or a cloud. But then that's where the project ended. Or maybe we deployed it on our phones or our web browsers on our edge devices. Here we get to deploy it on the cloud, or we can expose it as an API so that we can integrate it with our websites, and we can actually serve it as a service to our company, our products, or our customers. So this we're going to talk about. How do you deploy it? How do you make sure that you have enough resources for traffic? How do you monitor your endpoint? How do you debug issues? How do you deal with new model versions and things of that nature? So this is where I mentioned a little bit that we're going to cross on the cloud architect or DevOps side, where how do we actually maintain the infrastructure? How do we actually build the infrastructure that is needed for this model to run? We're going to talk a little bit about the services that AWS offers as a service without writing any code. Basically, API calls for different tasks. Could it be text-based, image-based, structured data, or time series? As well as security best practices, how to make sure that the endpoint we're exposing is secure. All the data we're storing are using best practices in terms of policies, encryption, and so forth. Then what happens when we want to retrain our model or we want to deploy another version? What happens? How do we detect? Do we have a performance drop? Maybe we have some kind of distribution shift in our new data that our model is not able to pick up. So it's a pretty diverse set of questions and topics. So our goal is to find the resources that are appropriate for each topic. So for some of them, especially for the modeling part, I think we have a pretty strong background. For the rest of them, especially for the data ingestion and the deployment, we need to figure it out what resources from AWS we need to use to accommodate each need. And there's some specific services here that are mentioned in terms of how do we go through this cycle: ingestion, processing, data analysis, training, deployment, maintenance, and so forth. I'm not going to mention them, but you can see there's services on analytics, on compute, containers, database, IoT, the different services that are offered as API, as well as management, security, networking, and storage. So yeah, the exam guide is pretty extensive, but it's a good starting point for us to take a deeper dive into each topic. So let me stop here. So getting ready for these topics, we came across this Ramp Up guide, machine learning cheat sheet, if you want to call it, or a collection of resources. It's actually available for all the certifications from AWS. There's one for the Cloud Practitioner as well as for the other professional level certifications. This one is specifically for machine learning, and I think it's a very well put together resource. We're going through it, and it has a collection of either digital training or website or video or paid training that the AWS team is recommending that you follow through in order to get ready for the certification. So these resources are individual resources, and they're under digital training. Many of them are offered as a package under a new resource in AWS called Machine Learning Plan. This one has a collection of quick, some of them are quick, some of them are very long resources on anything from basic services, anything from terminology, anything from math. There's one on math behind it, linear algebra, differential calculus, as well as basic NumPy and pandas operations when you're doing the first few steps of your data of your machine learning pipeline. There's a lot here. I haven't, as you can see, I haven't completed all of them. And then the end there's this exam readiness, which I think is the one step closer to the actual exam. So that learning path actually covers a lot of resources here, as well as here. There are some other resources here, a couple of videos I haven't checked out yet. And there's also some Coursera or other training edX as well that are offered or recommended. Udemy resources as well. And then you actually get to the example questions or sample questions. So this is the set of resources. This is what we're going through. Another big resource that I wanted to share. This is just another paper that I came across while reading some other resources. Another great resource that is mentioned is this book and collection of resources called Data Science on AWS. This is an O'Reilly book, but it also, if you've seen this by Chris and Angie, they offer a monthly event where they go over the book as well as the some applications of machine learning that runs in AWS. So I'll just mention their GitHub. Their GitHub is very well organized. It has a nice diagram that I think is very helpful for us in our journey here. And just to set some ground here, I think they're tackling this from a natural language processing background. So a lot of the applications you're going to see in this book are coming from NLP background, but it's good to see what services they're using for different steps of the machine learning pipeline. So they have some use cases, AutoML, and then for ingestion, they have different services they're using for exploration, data exploration, for feature engineering, for training, for hyperparameter tuning, for deployment, depending if your data is stream or batch, what services you're using, as well as security and storage as well. There's a good resource. Some of us are going through it now. There are two ways to go through it, I think. One is, or maybe three ways. One is the actual book. One is the GitHub version of it. As you can see, different chapters have different notebooks. And the other one is they record their monthly events, and they have a YouTube page here. And under playlists, I think it was workshops, is where we came across the latest one, which was on June of last year. So this is where they go over, I don't think they go over all the chapters in the book, but some of them, I think. And in 3 hours, basically you get a condensed version of the book. So if you don't want to read the book, or if you don't have the time or the patience to read the book, you can start with this. And then if you really want to get some hands-on experience, maybe you can move into the actual notebooks. Yeah, I'll pause here. So these are the resources that you see here: data science on AWS book, videos, and GitHub. David, anything else you want to add? Or
I just put the link to the presentation where you have all this information. So
perfect, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting, the like the machine learning plan. I've started some of that, and it's very good, but occasionally like some of it is a little dated.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's like that first one, demystifying. I think one of those was like from 2017 or something like that. Some of the things mentioned in there are a little out of date, but for the most part, the ideas are very solid. So
yeah, that's what I got as well. Yeah, some of the very early ones are kind of outdated, but the rest, yeah.
And I also I think it's interesting. They said you need to have 2 years or a year's worth of working.
They said 1 year, more than 1 year.
Yeah, developing, architecting, and running machine learning deep learning workloads on AWS Cloud.
Right.
But then it says right below, before you take this exam, we recommend that you have at least 2 years.
That's what that's what I saw, the 2 years. I suspect this is, as we saw with the Cloud Practitioner, I think it recommended a year or 6 months worth of, I can't remember what it was, but I don't think you had to have any, right? I mean, if you went through the prep that we went through.
Yeah.
So if your job doesn't involve you using AWS, I don't think you're going to be held back.
But it will still require more preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would help you.
Yeah, are you talking about Cloud Practitioner or the machine learning one?
Both, I think.
Both.
We haven't finished this one, but I suspect you don't have to have 2 years of hands-on experience.
Yeah, I mean, it is recommended. Yeah. But some hands-on experience is recommended, especially as you saw here with the book. We're actually covering services. Yeah, some hands-on is definitely good recommendation.
I mean, part of the reason I say that is, as we learned, is there's no lab, there's no coding exercise here. It's purely multiple choice questions. Obviously it helps if you've used some of these things, you'll remember it better, but you're not going to be tested in that way.
You're right. Yeah, the questions are multiple choice, but the questions are scenario based, right? So they'll give you a business scenario, and they will ask you not only which service, but the why as well, right? So the questions now, the possible answers are very close to each other. It's not as easy as the previous one. Like some of them might be easier to develop, some of them might be easier to maintain, some of them might be less costly to maintain. So based on the question, you need to pay attention to what is the right solution. It's more like business oriented, I would say. Yeah. I haven't gone through all the resources of the guide, but yeah, there's as I mentioned, some links here for. I think this is the Coursera version of the book, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Again, coming from an NLP background, and sorry. Classroom training, I haven't taken any of them. Usually they're pretty expensive. This Udemy I haven't checked out yet, or EDX. Yeah. Then in a couple of weeks, hopefully we've covered all of this. I'll share a new resource that I found recently that will help us with the exam, but I'll keep that for next couple of weeks. But we have lots to cover for for this month. So these are the resources that we're covering. Okay, I'll stop sharing and open it for discussion. Okay, some recommendations on a Udemy course. Cool, thanks, Ivan. Yeah, if you know anybody who's taking this specialization, let us know what resources they used, or if you come across any other interesting resource, feel free to share it on Meetup or on Slack.
Hey, George, I don't know if you mentioned it, that Chris and Aunt Jay, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, they were doing also a one-day tutorial for the ML on AWS. Mm-hmm. And I did it, I think, about 6 months ago.
Oh, nice.
And the only thing I'll say is, you can take the class and like it's a whole bunch of notebooks that you have to download, but they go so fast. I mean, no, literally, it was 8 hours, and I couldn't click fast enough because she talks like, she really knows her stuff, and she's talking, and you're clicking as fast as you can, and you're falling behind. You have to keep clicking through the breaks in order to catch up. But for somebody who's serious, it was a very good resource, and they're both very nice, people and good instructors. It was just very intense.
If you need to get a second mouse, you can click with both hands.
One finger.
Yeah. I hope they resume their meetups. But yeah, they have recorded them. They used to do them every month. They have them on their YouTube page.
So just to give a teaser, in 2 weeks, as George mentioned, we're gonna look at this again and bring what we've learned and how our strategy is going. I have a meeting with an acquaintance on Friday who actually has completed this specialization, and he's going to share with me what his strategy was to prep for this. So I'll also talk about that in a couple of weeks to see if there's any new things that he said we probably would be benefit from looking at. So.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, this is a good group challenge, community challenge. Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of resources out there that that give you a collection of guided steps how to tackle this certification. So hopefully we can contribute to the community like we did with a TensorFlow certification. We got a lot of great feedback from that online. Yep, there's a new resource called Studio Lab. Yeah, that's the equivalent of Colab actually that AWS recently announced. Yeah, it's supposed to be a very developer-friendly resource where you don't need a lot of infrastructure knowledge or AWS knowledge. You actually don't need any AWS account. You just need your email to sign up. So if you want to experiment with some data set, Studio Lab, and hopefully we get to cover that. Is a good resource. And then if you want to develop it more thorough, if you want to scale it more or deploy it, then you go to SageMaker and their all their ecosystem of products. Awesome. The other thing that's going this month, Robert, maybe you want to chat a little bit about the book that we're covering, just so the community is aware.
Sure. So some of you may be familiar with the San Diego machine learning group. We've had some folks from there join us at many meetups in the past, and that meetup group is going through the Aurélien Giron hands-on machine learning. Something about exercises with scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and Keras. One chapter each week. So some of us will be leading the discussion, in those sections. Pretty informal, just support our community as we go through the book.
Can you post a link to it, George?
Yeah.
Okay. So Robert's being modest, but he and George are both presenting a couple of those chapters themselves, I believe.
Correct. Yeah.
We're discussion leaders.
Discussion leaders. Yes. Okay.
So hopefully some content will be shared by someone else. Otherwise, we'll have a challenging discussion.
All right. Discussion in the mirror.
Awesome. Let me show my page real quick. Yeah, this is the book that Robert was mentioning. So this is the second.
Yeah, one thing to mention, it is the second edition, not the first one. So you want the white cover with the gecko on the front, not the red cover with some other animal is the first edition.
Right. So well, maybe there's a better way to see this. No.
I like the time to complete there.
Oh, there's a time to complete?
See that's right above. Yeah, if you just stay up all day, you're good to go.
Yeah, right. So yeah, there's two parts to it. We've covered the first part, which is the classical machine learning.
I think that's about the amount of time it would take to click through each page, as we discussed earlier, and not absorb the content.
Yeah. So yeah, diffusion trees, ensemble models, dimensional reduction, clustering, and now we just started chapter 10. Basic artificial neural networks, very, very basic. So for our community, this is very, very entry level. I think Robert is covering the next one, 11, and I'm covering chapter 12. Then there's loading and pre-processing with data API, basically, which we've covered. But I think when we covered it, we were actually more up to date with the APIs. This book might be a little bit out of date, given it was September 2019. Then I'm presenting the convolutional network chapter, and Robert is presenting the last one on generative GANs and autoencoders. So, second to last. Oh, there's more. Sorry, third to last. Yeah, it's a very dense book. We learned a lot through it.
And each weekly discussion barely touches on a small part of the chapter that it's related to by necessity. Right.
So that's on Saturday.
Way more than an hour content in each chapter. Right.
Yeah, that's on Saturdays. I'm going to cross-post our events. I'm going to put them here so we are aware. But if anybody wants to tune in, we just started with chapter 10, which is the very entry-level part of neural networks. Awesome. Cool. That's what we had for tonight. We hope to make some more progress and report back to you. Yeah, a couple of weeks.
Thanks for joining us. And if you're on YouTube, thanks for sticking with us and watching us there. So we can go ahead and stop the recording.
Yeah, also recording here, but we'll leave the floor open for discussion. Thanks, everyone.